Thanks for being here this afternoon for our art and medicine event. I'm excited to introduce our artist, Ashley Bravin, whose work in the gallery over in CAM chronicles her experiences with illness, disability, survival, and healing. Ashley is joined again by our artist in residence, Ted Meyer.
Thank you all for being here. Just start out, if you haven't seen Ashley's work yet, it's over in the CAM building in the gallery down below. What I really want to get into with her is how she tells her story, because she really visually tells her story in a really rich way. And I love her work. I've been wanting to have her here for a long time. And then she moved to Tennessee, so it's been hard to get her here. And luckily, she just got back because she was in the hospital with sepsis like a week ago. But she made it here. She got on the plane. So let's give her a. So Ashley studied at Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh and Bravin College in County Clare in Ireland. And she graduated with a BFA in painting and drawing. And your work focuses on documenting the process of your experience with chronic illness, raising awareness of the realities of day-to-day disabled life with chronic illness. So I know a lot of you guys are first year. So the gallery down in the CAM building, we try to tie it to the core curriculum. So whatever you guys are studying, we're going to find an artist who has something to do with that body system and give them a show. So always check out the gallery. So you have a number of things going on with you medically. So without the full list, why don't you give us a synopsis of what your life is going through right now?
Sure. So first of all, just thrilled to be here with you all today. My conditions span across multiple body systems, but the main conditions that I struggle with the most are fibromyalgia, ME/CFS, chronic migraine, occipital neuralgia, dysautonomia, and NDI, which are a lot of autonomic system conditions. And those are the ones that impact me the most and that my service dogs of 11 years have helped me with.
So you have a lot going on.
Yeah.
So before we get to the work about your illness, we're going to start with some of your early work. I don't know if you did these all in Carnegie Mellon, but I wanted to show these because they show your technical ability to draw actual objects. So when you were in college as an undergrad, we'll get to the grad school stuff, what kind of stories were you telling with your art back then?
When I started college, I really came from a draftsmanship perspective. I was interested in illustrating nature and the natural world. I was interested in doing scientific illustration.
All right, so this next series, I guess this was in your graduate program, you got into doing boxers. And when we were talking, you mentioned like, because this shows the humanity, and you also sort of showed like dog fighting in Kabul. And as somebody who's not a fan of boxing, it doesn't, like, how do you see the humanity in this? Because your later work is all about humanity of illness, but this seems like a big jump.
Right. So this work was kind of where I saw my artistic career trajectory going prior to illness. This work specifically came from a research grant and fellowships from Carnegie Mellon, researching the political, social, and economic unrest and their ties to blood sports, specifically boxing in the 1920s and 30s, and dogfighting post-Taliban regime in Kabul. And I had always thought that my work from that point forward was going to be tied into political and social subjects. And when my illness hit, I didn't anticipate that my focus of social artwork would be in an inward focus.
Now we're gonna jump to your work. So you're doing this very external work
Mhm.
people boxing, there's a humanity to it. Then you start getting sick and you start doing work about yourself. And you have a number of images of your arm. And what I find interesting about these is it's sort of like this disembodied person in a way. Like you're sitting, you're drawing with this hand, you're looking at this hand. It could be someone else's hand. It's definitely telling the story, especially the emergency room on a Friday night. You're seeing everything going into your body, all the medical care going in, but you can't really tell it's you yet. So why don't you talk about this idea of this arm that's telling a story? It's yours, but we don't know it's you.
Yeah, so this is actually how I first started making work about my illness journey, is that like I would start going to doctor's appointments, and I would draw on the sticky notes that were attached to my my journal that I was writing notes from my doctors, that I would just be drawing like the room that I was having my appointments in, and I would be drawing my arm as I was getting infusions.
Yeah, and at the end, we're gonna give you the link to her website. If you look at your website, it's really a visual diary, which is why I wanted to have you here, because a lot of the artists we have, they do work about their illness, but you approach it like you are really prolific, and I presume you have a really good sketchbook practice.
Yes. Yes, I have been keeping sketchbooks since I was in high school, and I have cabinets in my studio of sketchbooks. I do not have a current count, but I do several sketchbooks per year that are just filled to the brim of everywhere I'm eating, everywhere I'm traveling, and they were getting filled with this information. And this body of work that we're going to be introducing it got so much from this information that I had to create a body of work outside of just the sketchbook. It had to get larger to make more sense of it.
We'll go to the next arm piece here.
Yeah, so we moved from that point of view perspective to this larger piece. And this is one of the earliest pieces for my series, Catharsis, which is the name of the show. And Catharsis is, this series really is my way of working through what's happened to me, but also bringing to light what we as chronically ill and disabled people experience, that um, doctors, medical professionals don't see when we leave the office. This is me. Especially with this piece, I was being bounced around from so many different doctors' offices, and they were calling for blood draws over and over and over, and my veins are terrible, and they weren't realizing the amount of damage that it was causing to me, and I was covered in bruises. But the communication wasn't going between the doctors of that this was causing a problem. And so I'm using Catharsis to kind of like process these struggles of like, I just felt like a pincushion, and the piece is called Drained, because we were just going from lab to lab to lab at the time.
I will add, as someone with a chronic illness, the frustration as a patient to have to do tests over again because the communication hasn't gotten from one doctor to another is immense.
Yes.
All right, so we're leaving your arm and we're going to your whole body, and I talk about these pieces as sort of a full narrative of what's going on with you. There's a million things going on in each one of these. We have 3 in this series that we're showing. So I'd like you to talk about the idea of sort of what is going on. It's not just a doctor's appointment. There's tons of things happening in each of these.
Yeah, so as I became more of a complex patient, and what we call a chronic patient, my work became more complex because it wasn't just that I was meeting with a pain management. I wasn't just meeting with the gastroenterologist. I was meeting with entire teams of doctors, and it was the amount of paperwork was prolific. The amount of my partner here was driving me from ping-ponging between doctors. We were full-time patients. So this is just an amalgamation of imagery of my life in a week. And the pieces reflected that. We were doing infusions, we were doing obscure testing for balance, and we were taking massive amounts of medication. We have the pain scale, which I know you have a
Talk about that.
and we taking samples, and my service dogs were there with me during the entire time. But
So I want to talk about the pain scale because, so my illness, I had a lot of bone problems as a kid. So I have, when I hear other people talk, I think I have really high tolerance to pain. So I'm not sure where I would go on that pain scale. And we did a show, God, like 6, 7 years ago about pain, and we had a pain specialist on, and I said, do you still use that chart? And she said she doesn't use it anymore. The question she asks is, what can't you do now that you used to be able to do? And that's how she judges pain and how much it gets in. So when I saw that, I just hate that chart, especially as the colors change and it gets more red on some of them when pain. So we're on to the next.
and this is just a continuation of that, more of that imagery, the chronic pain experience, those visitor stickers that we're going through, especially when at the very beginning of the pandemic, where there were just stickers were amassing. I actually have saved all of my visitor stickers, and I have them in a binder. I have several of these pieces of just these compilations of imagery that gets stuck in my head as I have very painful tests done to me, and this is my way of processing it.
You've sort of, let's get back to the sort of using it as a diary. You've collected the ephemera of being sick, the stickers. I mean, it's sort of, do you ever look at this and think, when I was back in college, it never would have occurred to me, like, all this stuff would be part of my life?
I never would have guessed it. I didn't really have an idea that this was going to be a part of my life until after college. I never would have guessed it would have taken this trajectory. And in terms of ephemera, like, I have collected the refuse, the disposed pill bottles for the last 3 years, and the tubs are this large each year. Like it's a massive amount of, and you can see a unit of illness. And I've been meaning, I would love to show that as well, but that was not feasible to fly out here with the show. But it's ever present in the studio, especially when you see them up with all of the stickers and everything else.
So without getting into the specific symptoms or anything, around this time as things were going on, I mean, you have new med students here. You're starting to get smaller symptoms. They're building. I don't know exactly how the progression went for you, but maybe talk to them as a person, a patient, your emotional state as symptoms. You kept going to the doctor, symptoms seemed like they were building to the point you're at now. What's going through your head? Did they try to encourage you? Were they frustrated? Like what was going on?
Across my health journey, I had the opportunity to have some incredible doctors that have changed my life, And I also came across doctors that created a lot of harm. And it's really comes down to empathy. Um, and I think you know, doctors have a choice. Any healthcare care professional has a choice when they come in each day of how they want to approach their patients. And whether they want to approach them as how they think they see them or how they are listening to them. And I think a lot of the times with the pressures that doctors are under, they just will approach them with how they think they hear them and not as they are listening to them. And I don't think it's necessarily doctors' fault. The pressures you guys are under or will be under is tremendous. It's an incredibly unfair situation for everybody. But the doctors that did listen to me, like completely pivoted me from, we were at a point where we were thinking that I was facing some very dire situations that I could not turn out from. And now I was having, I was completely bedridden at one point and didn't think I could, I was at a very low functioning point, and now like I'm doing leagues better than I ever thought I could, thanks to a very select group of doctors that were focused on helping me get better. So it really does come down to empathy, and I want to stress is that if you can keep your empathy, that's going to be the best thing you can do for your patients.
Thanks. All right, we have one last one in this series.
And these are just smaller ones of the more of the same of these that are just the collage works.
Okay. So this next series, they sort of remind me of Francis Bacon paintings. I'm sure you've heard that from other people. And I show these a lot when I give talks, one of them in particular, because they really strip away any humanity for you as a patient. And the whole series, at least the ones I've seen, you're on an exam room, you're isolated. The dog is with you a lot of times, sort of looking at you lovingly in spite of the fact that your humanity's been stripped away. So what is it about being in the exam room that leads you to do paintings where there's you're just organs and meat, basically?
This was at the height of the severity of my illness, where we were, where like I just discussed, where I was like out of options, and I was in the ER on a first name basis, very ill, and I couldn't keep down medication, and I was, it was very dire situation, and it's when you're in that desperate situation where you're not getting, you can't get help, and you felt poked and prodded in all the tests and nothing's coming back, that you're in this state. And most interestingly is that these paintings, though they seem grotesque to a lot of people who are like able-bodied and not patients, not chronic patients at least, those of my friends who are chronically ill, these are the ones, these paintings, and you can go to the next ones. These are the paintings that that resonate the most with my friends who are chronically ill, like this one.
So here we have this is the one that I tend to show when I give talks. And I had never seen the photo until I was deep diving through your Facebook page the other day. So who is taking your photos for you? And the partner. And why don't you talk about how do you always work from photos? Is he always there documenting?
Yeah, so I do work from photos a lot. Uh, uh, my partner is with me for most most of my appointments. And he's done an incredible job of not only being a photographer, but also my partner, just incredibly supportive. Um, and he's gotten this knack for just getting these really visceral, beautiful photographs, wonderful touching moments, but also really devastating moments in our experiences. And I use these photographs in making these paintings. And we've collected quite a a huge folder of photographs from them.
Well, I was going to wait and ask this till the end, but since we're already talking about him now, one of the things, again, since you guys are first year, I really want to talk about how one person's illness affects the whole family, how it affects not only your time management, but I assume your time, I don't know what your job is, but you're going with her to meetings, especially, I talk a lot about families where maybe someone's taking care of a grandmother and they've got to get their daughter to ballet class or something, and it's just simple things that are hard to juggle. So maybe you could talk about how you two manage this.
uh, it was not easy for a lot of the time. We were very fortunate that his work was incredibly understanding of our situation, which a lot of patients do not have that kind of luxury. I had the uh, incredible amount of support from both Andrew and my family, that they were willing to both pitch in and fill in the gaps for each other. Not every patient has that. And his work was willing to help support us to be able to go to appointments and for him to make up the work elsewhere. But that's very rare. It's not.
So if he had had a different boss that wouldn't have allowed him time off, you would have had a totally different medical experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wasn't, I able to make it to my own appointments for a long portion of that time. And, I don't know what that impact would have had. I would have probably would not have made it to this level of functioning by a long shot. So we were very lucky the way it played out. And I'm incredibly grateful that we were able to work things out the way we did.
Right. Right. So this is the last one in this series, and I know it's a side view of you, but really it's not even recognizable
Yeah.
as a person. Was there something specific that day that was really bad?
Yeah, I think that was like at the end of when I was completely off of medication at one point, where it was just like I couldn't tolerate anything anymore. And then, but all the medication that was supporting me, I could no longer even tolerate. And then we were out of all options, and we just were unmoored at that point. And I think that's where that one was coming from.
How do you feel when you look back at them now that you're healthier?
I still feel like very connected to them, even though I am in a much better place now. There's a thing after experiencing traumas like these, that I think a lot of healthcare professionals don't understand of like, a lot of my healthcare professionals have been like, oh, well, you've gotten so much better. And they don't understand that like after you've experienced the levels of illness where you get to the point where you feel like you're never going to make it out, that you feel like you are always one misstep away of getting right back there again. And that fear is so visceral. Like you always, at least I always carry that with me, of that I can always get there again. And so that's why you carry that fear. It's something that never leaves you. This is just a painting that I was doing about the experience of being overwhelmed by the healthcare industry, drowning in, which my partner is very familiar with, the calls, appointments, pre-authorizations.
Right, so we're gonna go from drowning to these. So these drawings hold a little special thing for me because I always joke about how hospitals are not set up for you to get flowers. They don't have a vase in the hospital, and the flowers always land up in your water pitcher, and then you don't have a water pitcher. And this has always been a gripe of mine since I was a little kid. But you paint every set of flowers someone's brought to you when you've been in the hospital. So why don't you talk about what they mean to you?
So the Get Well Soon series is that we're gonna take a break for like a little bit of a lighter feeling. It's just about alluding to the misconception about chronic illness patients of getting well, because there's no getting well from chronic illness. A lot of people mean well when they say, oh, feel better, get well, you know, and people don't know what to say to chronic illness patients. And the truth is that there's no really good thing to say other than just, I hope your symptoms are better today, or something like that. But so the Get Well Soon series is just a head nod to that experience of each piece has a little thing written down about what was going on about the time around the time of when these paintings were done. But yeah.
How do you feel? Because when I've been in the hospital and people bring flowers, it sort of annoys me. I mean, I'm grateful, but I'm sort of like, yeah, flowers. It's like, it has no bearing on my life. I don't know how you feel.
I don't feel like that.
You're a nicer person than I am.
Um, um, I think towards the end of this series, I've done so many of them that like my mom has been like, oh, I'm gonna get you flowers. Please don't. I have to paint him then.
Now to the real star of the show.
Yes.
So you've had 2 service dogs,
Yes.
and we've got one, I think it was 2019 here, and your current one. So why don't you talk a little bit about your life changes during that time period? And then I'd also like you to talk about what it's like to be a patient with a service dog. Like, what is this relationship that you guys have that maybe I or some of these people out here who have a pet, just a regular pet dog, don't have in their interaction with them? And what is this dog trained to do specifically for you?
Other than sleeping.
Yeah.
So I've been a service dog handler for 11 years. I got Rosie at the very beginning of when my illnesses were really becoming prevalent. But at the time and this is a 5-year span, but I had Rosie when I was a novice patient, and I was my fibromyalgia was like really beginning to take hold, and I didn't realize what I had in store for me. I had no idea. And I was navigating that world, just kind of her and I, and I had like full mobility at that time. I was I thought things were rough then. Had no idea what was next for me. And then fast forward to Rico. Rico was a totally different situation. He was a program trained medical alert dog, and he does like like totally different tasks. And at that time I had Rico, fibromyalgia was the back seat of my experiences. Like that was, couldn't even hold a candle to what I was dealing with. And by then we knew all the routes to the urgent cares, ERs, and our specialists by heart. Like that's the level of chronic patient we were at by that point. And with Rosie, I was meeting with doctors infrequently. Rico, we were hand in hand with our doctors. And I realized I might be your first point of reference for a patient with a service dog. And I know that you guys are probably going to come into contact with a lot of people faking service dogs, especially being here in California. So I'm so sorry for that. It's a constant issue, and it's an issue that impacts us as service dog handlers a lot. It's created issues for me going into my own doctors and them denying me access because of people who are faking service dogs. But for example, Rico does medical alerts. He's able to alert to chronic migraine. He does dysautonomia alerts, and he does mobility tasks, forward momentum pulls. He does all sorts of tasks like retrieving medication. He does a laundry list of things. Rosie does her own tasks as well. And they all learn tasks specific to their handler's needs. And I could go on for a long time about that. Like service dogs are my passion, but
Let's look at some of the art about them.
yeah, go for it. That was during an EMU stay at UCLA, your rival. But that's he was doing active alerts there. And so he's obviously, you've seen him in the work, and you've seen Rico and Rosie in the work as well.
All right. How about this photo?
And yeah, these are some of the images. Like this is him doing a live alert that while I was getting an infusion of Vyepti, as if any of you folks are interested in neurology might know. And the dogs are present throughout all the appointments. They're always there. They're in all the photographs. And then this one is the Lost Catharsis piece we'll be showing, which depicts when I was, unfortunately, at the beginning, we had brought Rico home as a puppy, 8-week-old. And as soon as we brought him home, I became immensely ill and was bedridden. And you know, one of the big things is when you bring a puppy home, you're supposed to bond with there's a big bonding moment with your service dogs, and as you're raising them. And I missed out on all of that. I was so sick. My partner and our trainer basically raised Rico without me. And I was devastated, but also not functioning. And this is him basically growing up as the calendar months go by, and me missing out on that entire experience. But he was successfully raised as a service dog, and he is here today. And yeah. And the next few slides are just of showing that this is Rosie. She's older now. But showing that these service dogs are not just always service dogs. They are also just dogs that do have hotspots and get cones and are also um, uh, are dressed up for Halloween. And misconception about service dogs is that they don't get to have any fun. And they absolutely do. And I would argue many times that they are more spoiled than your average dog. My dogs have huge birthday parties. They have huge amounts of toys and activities. So they have very full lives and lots of sleep, as you can see.
So you had said the other dog was retired. So how do you know it's time? Do you give it a watch? What do you?
It depends. It depends on each and every dog individually. Some dogs will just naturally indicate when they are done. They'll stop tasking, they'll slow down, they'll have health problems. If you have a program, your program will say they're done. It depends. Rosie was owner trained, meaning I trained her. So it was my decision. I noticed I with her, she was a natural alerter for migraines, and I wanted to raise a puppy that while she was young enough, I wanted the puppy to learn from her. Hopefully, this isn't a guarantee, but hopefully that the puppy would pick up on her alerts. So like at the exact timing, get the puppy Rico to learn from her. So I was hoping that she'd phase out as he'd phase in. And that's exactly what happened. Arguably, Rosie could have continued working. I worked with them in tandem, which was, I worked both dogs at the same time as they were learning from, as he was learning from her. But arguably she could have continued working, but Rico was ready. And then Rosie now lives the cushy life of a dog. And that's us.
This is my favorite family portrait. Or, if we're getting close to the end here, if anybody has any questions about the art or the dog or anything, feel free.
Thanks. I'm a second-year medical student, and I also struggle with chronic pain. I have since I was in high school, and I've attended a few of these sessions, and just in general through our education, we've talked to people who have chronic pain, chronic conditions, of course. What I wanted to ask about is I feel like every person that we talk to has a different perspective, both on their journey and what they think chronic pain is and like what that means for the individual person. But I found that your art, of course, you have your sketches, so I'm sure it's not 100% of what you draw, but what you chose as your publicly facing art focuses a lot on these themes that you're touching on of like the dehumanization, perhaps what some would describe as the more negative characteristics, and you paint the experience of what you do. Whereas I've also seen almost like the flip side of people who take their experiences and it's something totally else. They paint pictures of flowers and meadows and fields and rainbows and sparkles, right? Not to say that I'm not passing judgment on one or the other. I just wanted to know what your mentality is, if you've put any thought into why you feel that that's what you focus on, the catharsis of that, as opposed to doing something else, which you have the Get Well series, which I think maybe is more in that line, but I wanted to know what your thoughts were on that.
So it's funny because I've had this question asked before. The act of painting these images out is, and the whole name to the series, Catharsis, it's like exercising it. It's getting the images that are seared in my brain of the experience of it that I need to get it out. And it's, if I were to paint like the positive imagery, which, and there's nothing, I have no negative statements about that. I interface with a lot of chronically ill artists that take totally different directions with this stuff. But for me, it is that I need to get the imagery that has imprinted upon me, process it through. And I make a lot of like sketchbook stuff that has nothing to do with my chronic illness stuff. Like I draw like the food we eat in my sketchbooks and things. But that is why I do that. Thank you for that.
Anybody else have any questions for her?
Thank you so much for being here and sharing everything. I'm really curious, from the first artwork that we saw with you in the ER room, and as we progressed, we saw different levels, obviously, of humanization, dehumanization. I'm curious what level of conscious thought you had to how you showcase yourself, and particularly your eyes, and also the eyes of the dogs that you were able to show in some of the pictures, and how that showcases the level of hope that you've had throughout the journey that you've had.
Thank you. I think the dogs are like a constant symbol of hope within the pieces. They're like a symbol of like innocence and hope, and also tranquility. Like they're an anchor in all of the pieces. They are for me in the life that I'm living, that they're just an anchor point throughout the entire experience. And the eyes that were in the piece were from a vestibular test that had been done. But the dogs the dogs throughout the pieces are that point, that through line of hope through the entire series.
Great. Well, we are out of time. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Ashley for making it all the way here. If you want to follow her, take a picture, and you can get to her website from here. Thank you all for coming. The next program for us, I think, or for me, I think is in February. So we'll see you then.
Thank you, everyone.